car just winked at me.
At the beginning of the movie, we are introduced to a racing car named Herbie. It is better to say that this car is shown. This car was the most famous racing car of the previous generation, and it has never lost in any racing competition. Herbie and his owner have easily overcome many difficult situations, but one day, Herbie has a serious accident that destroys many of its parts. As a result, it starts competing in many races. Annoyed by this, Herbie's owner leaves it at a junkyard, where Herbie meets Dave, the owner of the junkyard. However, Dave is very upset and doesn't like Herbie at all. Meanwhile, the owner of the truck that brought Herbie tells Dave not to bother Herbie because this car cannot stand its own humiliation. When Dave goes to get Herbie off the truck, Herbie kicks his shoe. The truck driver starts pushing Herbie from behind, and Dave starts pulling it down with a chain. But Herbie tries its best not to be pulled down. However, when it sees the exit from the factory, it tries to run. Herbie attempts to escape, but its tire gets punctured by the iron machinery. This forces it to stay in the factory despite its reluctance. Herbie has to stay in this factory with the wrecked cars. It knows it will be crushed like the rest of the cars. Then the scene shifts to a few months later. Here we are introduced to a girl named Peyton. She arrives at her graduation ceremony on a skateboard. Her father is very excited for her because Peyton is the first girl in her family to graduate. Peyton's father, Ray, is a racing car coach, and he trains her brother, Tom, to drive racing cars. Tom has a race that day, so Ray takes Peyton to the stadium to watch the competition. Tom and his family are there. Shortly after, the race begins, but like every other time, Tom has an accident while turning the car around. In truth, Tom is not yet 100% ready for professional racing competitions. When the family returns home, Peyton notices several holes in the wall while looking at the paintings. These paintings remind Peyton of her grandfather, who was a famous racer. Inspired by her grandfather, Peyton started racing at the age of 15. She also dreams of becoming famous in the racing world. But one day, Peyton has an accident while racing. This incident causes her father to forbid her from racing. Peyton feels sad thinking about how she will never be allowed to race again. Meanwhile, her father Ray approaches her and promises to buy her a gift for her graduation the next morning. The following day, Peyton and her father Ray visit an old car factory to buy a car. Peyton can choose any car she likes, and this happens to be the factory where Herbie is. Herbie notices Peyton immediately. It sees her and chooses her as its owner at first glance. Herbie also thinks about going home with Peyton. However, it cannot move from its spot because it doesn't have a tire. Meanwhile, a crane arrives to dismantle Herbie. To save itself, Herbie starts honking its horn loudly to get Peyton's attention. Peyton, however, likes a Nissan car and wants to make a deal with Dave for it. At that moment, Herbie is being lifted by the crane for dismantling. It falls off the crane and lands on the Nissan, crushing Peyton's favorite car. Now, Peyton had no other option, so she decided to buy Herbie. She brought Herbie home and repaired some of his parts. Ray told Peyton that he was taking the car to Kevin's garage for further work. When Peyton got into the car, a letter popped out of the dashboard. The letter was written by Herbie's previous owner and read, "Take good care of the car." But whenever Peyton started the car, it went out of her control and started moving on its own, which scared her. Peyton brought Herbie to Kevin's garage. Kevin was Peyton's school friend, and they were meeting after many years. Kevin had liked Peyton since their school days but never mustered the courage to tell her. Now Peyton asked him to fix Herbie. Kevin agreed and assured her he would fix Herbie properly. However, they first needed to figure out what was wrong with the car. Peyton and Kevin took Herbie out for a test drive, but Herbie started blowing a lot of smoke on the road. Frustrated, Peyton decided to take Herbie back to the old factory. However, Herbie didn't want to go back there and expressed his resistance by lifting his front tire. Peyton lost control as Herbie started moving very fast. Surprisingly, Herbie brought Peyton to a sports car museum. Herbie had brought Peyton to the sports car museum, where Peyton met her school friend, Trip. Trip was the Nextel Cup champion in racing, and many people had gathered around him to meet the celebrity. Meanwhile, Herbie began honking his horn repeatedly, prompting Peyton to turn it off. When Peyton opened Herbie's back door to check, Herbie threw a burnt car part at her, ruining her clothes. Kevin opened the front door of Herbie and found a racing suit and helmet inside. Peyton took them out, and as she did so, Trip began laughing at Peyton's car. Tripp mocked Herbie and suggested that such an old car belonged in a circus. Herbie, enraged by Tripp's comment, scratched Tripp's car with his side mirror. Tripp became furious and vowed revenge against Herbie. Seeing the tension, the crowd at the museum started chanting for a race. They were mocking Herbie and wanted to see a race between the two cars to settle the issue. Peyton got out of the car and tried to apologize to Tripp, but Herbie closed all its windows and sped toward the racetrack. As the race began, Peyton tried to control Herbie, but the car went out of her control. Using its old parts and clever tricks, Herbie managed to keep up with Tripp's car. Tripp, however, tried to push Herbie off the track. Frustrated, Peyton decided to stop trying to control Herbie and instead work with him as a team. Together, Peyton and Herbie raced with determination. Tripp attempted to outmaneuver Herbie, but Herbie showcased incredible skill by drifting over Tripp's car, surprising everyone. The two cars were neck and neck near the finish line, but Herbie climbed onto the safety bar and crossed the finish line first, winning the race. Tripp was furious. Despite being a skilled racer with a powerful car, he had lost to an old, seemingly broken car. After the race, Peyton returned to the garage and told Kevin, "I didn't win the race." Herbie did it on his own. Kevin, however, brushed off her words and congratulated her on the victory. The most surprising part was that Peyton had beaten the Nextel Cup champion with a 1963 car, a feat no one could have imagined. The scene shifted to the next morning. Peyton and her father Ray were at home, where they found her brother, Tom, involved in an argument. Tom's poor performance in racing had cost them another sponsor. Just then, the sponsor, Sally, arrived in a yellow car. Herbie immediately liked the yellow car. Sally entered the house and showed Ray a video of Peyton's race with Tripp. Ray was shocked to see a wrecked car perform so well. However, he became angry with Peyton for racing again despite being banned. Peyton tried to calm her father and explained that the car was not hers, it belonged to her friend Max. Determined to continue racing, Peyton decided to enter the next competition using Max's name. On the other hand, Tripp was deeply disappointed after losing to Herbie. His manager, Larry, tried to console him by saying that losing didn't really matter. However, Tripp's ego was hurt because he had been defeated by a seemingly broken car. Determined to redeem himself, Tripp insisted on organizing another race. He instructed his team to schedule a race competition in 2 days, confident that Max Peyton's alias would show up to participate. The scene then shifted to Peyton taking Herbie to Kevin's garage. At the garage, Kevin showed Peyton a new project he had been working on. He suggested modifying Herbie to give him a racing car look. Peyton hesitated, explaining that she couldn't race anymore because of a promise she made to her father after an accident a few years ago. While Peyton was talking, Herbie noticed a newspaper on the floor featuring an advertisement for an upcoming race competition. The advertisement promised a $10,000 prize to the winner. Herbie playfully honked his horn, causing the newspaper to fall onto the car's windshield. When Peyton saw the ad, she realized that winning the prize money could help her move to New York. Kevin encouraged Peyton to participate in the race, offering to repair Herbie for free if she agreed. He also proposed splitting the prize money if she won. Despite her fears, Peyton eventually agreed. Together, Peyton and Kevin started transforming Herbie into a racing car. First, they washed the car. While being washed, Herbie humorously shook water off his body, making the process both strange and funny. Afterward, they replaced some of Herbie's parts and installed a sunroof. They then went for a long test drive to ensure everything was in order. Meanwhile, Tripp and his friend Crash were investigating Herbie. Tripp wanted to uncover the secret behind the dilapidated car's ability to defeat his supercar. However, they found nothing unusual under Herbie's hood. Later, Peyton overheard her father talking to Sally, who revealed that their last sponsor was planning to leave them. This news strengthened Peyton's resolve to win the upcoming race. On the day of the race, Tripp was shocked to see Herbie's new look. Tripp approached Peyton, pretending to be curious about her connection with Max. Peyton avoided his questions, but Kevin stepped in and handled the situation. The first round of the race began, featuring several cars competing for the chance to race against Tripp in the final. It was announced that the winner of the final race would receive $10,000. As the race started, the crowd in the gallery cheered for Herbie, who quickly left the other cars behind. Herbie ultimately won the race, securing a spot in the final against Tripp. Later that day, Tripp reviewed footage from the race and noticed red hair sticking out from Max's helmet. He realized that Max was actually Peyton. Meanwhile, Herbie was once again captivated by Sally's yellow car, attempting to impress her with various gestures. Peyton and Kevin watched this, marveling at Herbie's human-like emotions and realizing that he had a heart and could understand more than they initially thought. Kevin gifted Peyton a locket, but their moment was interrupted when Tripp arrived. Tripp turned on his car's headlights and splashed water at Kevin. He then asked to speak to Peyton alone. During their conversation, Tripp questioned why Peyton didn't race with her own car. He revealed that he had started racing because he was inspired by Peyton's grandfather. He even offered Peyton the keys to his own car, encouraging her to drive it. Peyton happily accepted the offer and took Tripp's car for a spin. Herbie, however, felt jealous and didn't want Peyton driving another car. While Peyton was away, Tripp seized the opportunity to inspect Herbie's engine. However, Herbie, aware of Tripp's intentions, retaliated by pouring gasoline on Tripp and dropping a bucket on his head. Furious, Tripp grabbed an iron hammer and tried to damage Herbie, but Herbie's body was so sturdy that it remained unscathed. Instead, Herbie playfully knocked Tripp to the ground. Shocked and frustrated, Tripp couldn't comprehend what was happening. Herbie continued to taunt him with strange antics. When Peyton returned, she told Tripp that driving his car was the most exciting experience of her life. Tripp then proposed a deal to Peyton. The winner of tomorrow's race would get $10,000 and the loser's car. Tripp believed he would win and take Herbie for himself. Although Peyton was initially hesitant, she eventually agreed, remembering her family's financial struggles. She realized that if she won, she could sell Tripp's expensive car and help her father. At the same time, Peyton believed she could take Herbie with her to the race. Confident in winning, she agreed to the terms. However, when Herbie realized that Peyton had bet on him, he became very upset. The next morning, Peyton went to the kitchen and saw her friend Elena. Elena informed her that they needed to leave for New York, but Peyton explained that she had a race competition that day. She asked Elena to accompany her, and they both went to Kevin's garage. When they arrived, Kevin told Peyton that Herbie was acting strangely and suggested that Peyton should talk to him. Frustrated, Peyton scolded Herbie, saying that he needed to act according to her wishes. This made Herbie even angrier. The day of the race finally arrived. Tripp's car and Herbie were set to race against each other. As the race began, Herbie started at a high speed, but Tripp's car kept overtaking him. Nearing the finish line, Herbie abruptly slammed on the brakes, deliberately losing the race. Peyton got out of the car, visibly angry, while Tripp celebrated his victory. When Peyton removed her helmet, the crowd was shocked to see her. Her father, Ray, was also present and surprised by Peyton's participation. Peyton was furious because she had lost Herbie, as per the terms of the bet. Kevin tried to calm her down, assuring her that she was destined to win future races. However, Tripp claimed Herbie as per the agreement, and Peyton had to watch as Tripp took control of Herbie. Peyton's father, Ray, tried to talk to her afterward. Peyton, struggling with guilt for lying to her father, attempted to explain, but Ray refused to listen and left. Disheartened, Peyton told Elena that they were leaving for New York that day. Elena urged her not to waste her racing talent, making Peyton realize she couldn't give up. Determined, Peyton rushed to Tripp to get Herbie back. Tripp revealed that his friend Crash had taken Herbie for a drive. Meanwhile, Herbie was shown participating in a monster truck competition, where cars were being destroyed. As the show began, heavy trucks started attacking Herbie, leaving him battered. By the time Peyton arrived, Herbie was severely damaged. Peyton tried to run to Herbie, but a security guard stopped her. Desperate, Peyton approached the race organizer, claiming that Herbie was her car and she wanted it back. The organizer mocked her, saying that if any part of Herbie survived, Peyton could have the car for free. Assuming Herbie would be completely destroyed, as a monster truck prepared to crush Herbie, Elena distracted the security guard, giving Peyton the chance to enter the field. Herbie, though badly injured, recognized Peyton and opened his eyes. Seeing Peyton gave Herbie the strength to continue. Just as the monster truck was about to fall on Peyton, Herbie used his sunroof to save her, pulling Peyton inside. Herbie then threw Crash out of the driver's seat. Together, Peyton and Herbie fought to escape, dodging attacks from other cars. In a breathtaking scene, Herbie climbed onto another car, jumped into the air, and landed on the monster truck, crushing it completely. After defeating all the cars, Peyton brought Herbie back to Kevin's garage. Kevin was upset by Herbie's condition but immediately started repairs. The next morning, Peyton learned that her brother Tom had a race that day. However, Tom had an accident during the race and was rushed to the hospital. Doctors discovered that Tom was having trouble seeing with his left eye and informed him that he would never be able to race again. Tom asked their father to let Peyton take his place in the upcoming race, but Ray hesitated. Peyton confronted her father, arguing that racing had been her dream since childhood. She pointed out that despite Tom's past accidents, he had always been allowed to race. Ray, worried about Peyton's safety, admitted that she reminded him of her late mother, whom he didn't want to lose. Meanwhile, Kevin needed parts to repair Herbie, but his supplier refused to provide them until past dues were cleared. Tom stepped in, calling his maintenance team to help repair Herbie. The team worked tirelessly to give Herbie a new look, repainting him and making him look brand new. Finally, the day of the much-anticipated Nextel Cup competition arrived. Tripp also arrived at the stadium, ready to compete. When he saw Herbie, he was shocked. Tripp angrily confronted Crash, demanding to know why Herbie wasn't destroyed when Crash had the chance. Meanwhile, someone informed Tripp about a new sponsor, but Tripp was too focused on the race to think about it. Meanwhile, Peyton talked to Herbie before the race. Herbie apologized to Peyton for being so possessive of Tripp over the past few days. Herbie also expressed forgiveness in his own unique way, making some cheerful noises. They arrived at the racetrack, where everyone's eyes were on Herbie. Peyton's father Ray was surprised to see her on TV, as he had always been concerned about Peyton getting hurt while racing. Before the race started, all the racers adjusted their steering wheels and then headed out to warm up. After the test drive, the race began, and all the cars surged forward at incredibly high speeds. However, Herbie and Peyton initially fell far behind. As the race progressed, Herbie picked up speed, and they started catching up with the others. Watching this unfold on TV, Ray decided to rush to the stadium to watch the race in person. Tripp, who was leading the race, was ahead of everyone else. But soon, Herbie closed the gap, and other cars surrounded them, making it difficult for Peyton to find a way to get ahead. Eventually, Peyton managed to navigate through the crowd of cars, encouraged by her father, whose voice she heard cheering her on. Hearing Ray's words gave Peyton a significant boost in confidence. She carefully maneuvered her way forward, but trouble arose when Herbie's fuel tank started leaking. The mechanics quickly arrived to fix the leak, but they warned Peyton that Herbie was in poor condition. If Herbie sustained even a minor hit, they wouldn't be able to finish the race. Determined, Peyton resumed the race, driving with extreme caution. She eventually caught up to Tripp's car. As the two cars moved side by side, Tripp attempted to push Herbie off course, causing the sticker on Herbie's tank to peel off. When Tripp tried to push Herbie again, Peyton cleverly slammed on the brakes. This caused Tripp to lose control of his car, crashing into a wall. Herbie, despite his damaged state, stayed steady and skillfully maneuvered through the remaining cars. Herbie and Peyton surged ahead, overtaking all the other racers. In a thrilling finish, Peyton crossed the finish line first, becoming the first woman to win the Nextel Championship. The crowd erupted in celebration as Peyton celebrated her victory with her family and friends. Meanwhile, Tripp was furiously shouting, claiming that Herbie was a ghost car, and that Peyton had only won due to the car's miraculous powers. He also insisted that Peyton didn't have the skill or ability to win on her own. However, no one paid attention to Tripp's outbursts as everyone was busy celebrating Peyton's historic win. In the midst of the celebrations, Peyton realized her feelings for Kevin. She had noticed how much Kevin had supported her throughout the journey, and it was clear that he had always cared deeply for her. Kevin's belief in her abilities had been a significant factor in her victory. A few weeks later, we see Ray jokingly telling Herbie to come home early. After winning the race, Herbie had also been spending time with his girlfriend, the yellow car. In the final scene, Herbie and his girlfriend are seen going out for a long drive together. And with that, this exciting movie comes to an end. If you enjoyed this recap, please let me know in the comments. Also, for those watching my channel for the first time, or who haven't subscribed yet, I kindly request you to subscribe and support my channel. Stay well and stay healthy, and I'll see you in the next video.